this is Celine from Blue Calla Patterns. Welcome to video 5 for the Sunflower Shopping Tote. We're going to be assembling the lining in this video. We'll do something really easy to start. We're going to assemble the gusset for the lining. So you'll need your bottom lining piece and your 2 side gusset lining pieces, and they should have fusible woven interfacing on the wrong side. You assemble this exactly as you did for the exterior, except we don't have pockets on the lining version. So we're just lining up the shorter edge of the bottom of the side gusset. So if you're using a directional print, make sure that this is the bottom, this is the top, and you'll just pin these together, and then we'll do the same for the other side. I'm going to do it all at once just to make it go by a little bit faster. We have a lot of assembling to do for the lining. So here you go. I'm just going to go over to the machine and sew them together, and then I will press the seam allowance towards the bottom and then top stitch the seam allowance along the bottom. I'll show you that when it's complete. So both side gusset pieces have been sewn to the bottom piece. I'll just press the seam allowance, so I just flip it so that the seam allowance is pointing towards the bottom, and press it. Do the same for the other side. Okay, so I'm just going to go over to the machine and I'll top stitch that seam allowance along the bottom, so along the edge where the bottom piece is. Okay, so this is all assembled and the seam allowance has been top stitched. I'm just going to mark my centers, so fold it in half vertically, mark the centers on the wrong side, and then you can set aside your assembled gusset for now. Now we're going to sew up the slip pocket. I'm going to make sure here that I'm not confusing everyone. Okay, yes, so we will take both of our slip pocket pieces and place them right sides together and pin them along the top edge. Then I'll go over to my machine and I'll sew them together along this top straight edge only, making sure that I backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so these 2 slip pocket pieces have been sewn together along the top edge, and then I want them right sides together, but first what I'll do is I'll press the seam open. It's a very long pocket piece. Okay, then what I'll do is I'll just flip them so that they are wrong sides together. And then I press the top edge flat along the entire way. Okay, and then I'll go over to my machine and I'll just top stitch the seam at the top. Okay, so I've top stitched along the top with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to take one of my lining pieces and I will place this pocket piece on top, like so, and pin it in place, and then I'll go over to my machine, and for now I just want to use a basting stitch to sew the slip pocket piece to the lining piece. And you can do that basting stitch with 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you're just sewing along this edge to attach the slip pocket piece to the lining piece. All right, so this is basted in place to the lining piece, and we want to separate it into individual slip pockets. So you're doing this sort of approximate. You can actually separate these however you like. If you want to add some pen slip pockets, that's up to you. I'm just dividing this equally into 3 separate pockets. So it's roughly 18 inches, a little bit more, maybe 18 1/4 inches. But what I'm going to do is divide these into 6 inches exactly, and make a mark along the top edge and the bottom edge. And then you're going to go over to your machine and you're going to sew from the bottom mark all the way up to the top mark. Make sure that at the top edge of the pocket that you do some back stitching to make the openings of your pocket. You don't want those stitches to come apart. You want them to be nice and strong. Okay, so we now have 3 separate slip pockets. I'm going to set that aside for now, and you're going to take your interior zipper pocket pieces, and you're going to install the interior zipper pocket exactly as we did for the exterior zipper pocket, with one difference. We need to fold the bottom edges of these lining pieces because we're going to turn our bag through the bottom of this zipper pocket. So start by folding in the bottom edges about 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. It doesn't matter what you use as long as they're both the same. And I'm out of water in my iron, so it's not steaming. Okay, we'll do our best. Okay, same with this piece. Make sure you fold in the same amount and press. Okay, then on one piece only, you'll want to cut away the top 1 inch of it. So okay, and you can throw that away. Okay, so now following the steps as the same steps as the exterior pocket. I'm not going to redo exactly the same steps. You can go back to that video and review how I did that. I believe it's video 2. So you're going to attach first the shorter piece that we just cut off the 1 inch strip. Then you're going to attach the second piece to the other side of the zipper. So go back and refer to the exterior zipper pocket for that. Then you're going to take your interior zipper pocket facing piece and you're going to draw the rectangle on the wrong side. So again, this is very similar to the exterior assembly. Okay, so this rectangle is 9 inches wide by 3/8 of an inch high. If you're using a number 5 or 4.5 zipper like I am, you can actually make the box bigger, make it 1/2 inch, but I'm just going to leave it at 3/8 of an inch because it really won't make that much of a difference. Okay, so now I'm just going to quickly fold this in half because I want to center my facing on this piece. So make a mark at the top and the bottom on the right side. Okay. And then do the same for the facing piece. Now you don't really have to be this precise if you're good at estimating the center, that's fine. This is on the inside of your bag, so it doesn't have to be as perfect. And I want this to be 2 inches below the straight edge of, like the top straight edge of my lining piece, centered like so. And then you can just make sure all of your center marks align. Perfect. And pin this facing piece in place. Okay, and then I'm going to go over to my machine and I'm going to sew along the rectangle that I drew, the rectangle lines. Okay, so I've just sewn along the rectangle lines. Now, to those of you who've watched some of my other videos, this is probably really repetitive for you because I always install my zipper pockets in the same way. A tip for getting nice corners on your zipper pocket opening: use a shorter stitch length when you're sewing the rectangle, and when you're turning at the corners, keep your needle in the down position and just rotate everything, and that way there you'll get a nice perfect corner. Another important tip for getting nice corners for your zipper pocket openings is how you cut out the zippers. So you're supposed to draw a horizontal line and then diagonal lines going to each corner. I have that. I show you how to do that in the pattern. So that's step 39 here. I don't usually draw my lines anymore because I've made so many of these, but if you're just starting out, you'll want to draw those lines. So I use my rotary cutter to do the first straight line, and then I want to get into those corners as close as I can without cutting any of the stitching. So I actually use my thread snips to do that because they're pretty sharp and they have a really pointy tip, so that allows me to get right in the corner. Now this is usually, I think, where people might make a mistake. They don't cut close enough into the corner, close enough to the stitching, and so your corners will pucker if you don't. Should probably, if you wear glasses, probably be wearing them, like I should be wearing mine right now. So hopefully I don't do a terrible job because I can't see properly. Okay, so now you pull that towards the wrong side and you press it. Now when you're pressing, try not to rush it and take your time. So what I do is I dampen my fingers, and this is the same as what I showed you for the exterior when we were pressing it towards the wrong side. I do a little bit at a time, and I roll the seam, and then I press it. Actually, let me pause and put some water in my iron. Okay, I have our water in my iron now, so hopefully we'll get some steam. And I'm going very slowly, rolling the seam and then pressing it. And I always iron from the right side and then again from the wrong side. So I don't do these edges yet. I do the top and the bottom longer edges first, and then I'll go ahead and do the corners. Definitely steam coming out now. Okay. Okay, so when I do the corners, I kind of tug to make sure everything sits nice and flat. Then I'll turn it around and I press from the wrong side. I did not bad for not wearing my glasses. Okay, now when this is done, we'll be attaching the zipper. So I haven't sewn my lining pieces to my zipper yet. So I'll go do that and then we'll install it into the lining panel. Okay, so I've sewn my 2 lining pieces to my zipper. This is, again, very similar to the exterior zipper assembly. Now we're going to sew this into the opening in the lining piece. What you want to do is make sure that the edges of your pocket lining pieces are aligned with your facing piece. Your shorter lining piece should be at the bottom. The taller one is at the top. Now just center it, and I think I mentioned this for the exterior, but I don't pin the whole way. I just pin the edges and then I adjust the position of my zipper as I'm sewing the zipper and the lining pieces in place. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my machine now and I'm going to sew this in place. I'm going to go all the way around the rectangle opening with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from the opening. Okay, the zipper is now sewn into place. This is what it should look like from the wrong side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top folded edge and bring it down to meet the bottom folded edge, and I will clip these together along the bottom. It's really important that your bottom edges be perfectly lined up. And then you'll see it's kind of got a bit of a bubble here. What I just do is I press going upwards, and that makes sure that the lining won't get stuck in my zipper. So now I'm going to go over to the machine and I will sew only the sides, and I usually place it so that this piece is facing up, and then I fold it out of the way, and I start at the top, I back stitch, I sew as close as I can to with the stitching where I attach the zipper, and then all the way down to the bottom folded edges, and then I back stitch again, and I do the same thing for the other side. Make sure that you're not sewing the main lining piece, that you're just sewing your zipper pocket facing piece and your 2 zipper pocket lining pieces. Okay, so I've sewn up both sides. I'm not going to trim the seam allowance all the way. I'm just going to trim the bottom so that it makes it easier to sew the bottom of the zipper pocket shut before we, after we're done turning our bag. And then right now I would like you to open your zipper all the way and leave it open. That way there we won't forget it when it comes to turning our bag in the last step. You can set aside this main panel for now, this lining panel. And we're now going to assemble our zipper panel. Okay, so again, this is probably repetitive if you've watched some of my past videos. I always install zipper panels pretty much the same way. So what you're going to start by doing is make a mark about 1/2 an inch or 3/4 of an inch from the edge of the opening here, top and bottom of your zipper tape, and that's going to be where we're going to fold the zipper outwards. So now, do not take your zipper pull off, but do open the zipper at the opening here. And then the zipper had a bubble, so they're not quite the same. Okay. So we want to fold the zipper outwards at a 90-degree angle at the mark that we made on either side. So what you're going to do, and hopefully you can see this, is you're going to pinch the zipper tape at the mark and then bring that pinch up to meet the coil. At the same time, you're curving that coil outwards. Can you see how that looks? And then you're going to, you can either hand base this in place so it doesn't move, or you can go over to your machine and do it. And then you're going to do exactly the same thing for the other side at the mark that you made. And you want to make sure that they curve outwards at exactly the same location on both sides. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. I based it just on the outer edges here, and I tried to make sure that they curve out at pretty much the same position on both sides. All right, so you can close it and have a look. And then this is what it looks like on the wrong side of your zipper. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so that is done. Now you're going to need your zipper panels. So you should have 2 exterior. I'm using cork for my exterior, and then fabric. Now in the pattern I'm explaining how to do this with fabric. So it's a little bit different if you're using cork or vinyl for the exterior like I am. Not much different, but just a little bit different. So what you're going to start by doing is, I want on the shorter end of the zipper panel, I want about 1/4 inch to be folded and pressed towards the wrong side. So wrong sides together. Now with the cork, obviously I can't press it, so I'm actually going to glue. I'm going to glue them towards the wrong side, which is a little bit of fabric glue. And then I'm going to clip this and let it dry before I continue. Get some clips. Okay, so I'm just folding this 1/4 inch and putting a clip, and then I'll wait till it dries. Okay, same for this one. So I'm going to pause the video, wait for this to dry, and then we'll continue. Okay, so you'll now need 1 exterior zipper panel, 1 lining zipper panel, and your zipper. And you're going to flip your lining piece so it's right side facing up, and you want the folded edge to be on the left. And then place your zipper over top. So this is right side up and your zipper is right side up. And you want to align the longer edge here, the edge of your zipper tape, with the longer edge of your zipper panel lining piece. And you want this edge here to be about 3/8 of an inch away from this the shorter end of your zipper panel. Just pin this in place, and then you're going to go over to your machine, and you can just quickly base this in place with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so your zipper is basted to the lining piece. Now you're going to take your exterior piece and make sure that the folded edges of both are at the same end. So it should be the opposite of the opening of the zipper. And just place them now right sides together and clip this in place. And now you're going to sew through all the layers. So the zipper panel lining piece, your zipper, and your zipper panel exterior piece. But you're not going to sew, I'm just going to move my zipper pull here so I can clip it properly. You're not going to sew around all 3 sides. Here you're just going to sew around 2 sides. So you'll start here at the shorter corner here at the bottom, and you'll sew up towards the corner. Now you're sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. So you sew back stitch, sew up to the corner, rotate, and then sew along all of these layers with 1/4 inch seam allowance. And when you get to the folded edge, back stitch and stop there. Okay, so I've sewn along the 2 sides, and this is the wrong side, this is the right side. So all we want to do now is just maybe trim a little bit of the seam allowance here at the corner, just so that it's not as bulky. And then I'm going to trim away some of the zipper as well. Now, if you don't want your zipper, your cut zipper end to fray, you should use a lighter right now and melt it. Just pull your fabric back so that you don't burn anything. And never cut the edge of the zipper here, you just want to cut the end. Okay, so if you're using fabric for both the exterior and the lining, this step is a little bit easier because you can just press it away from the zipper, press both the exterior and the lining. But because I'm using cork and I can't really press cork, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tug them away from the zipper as much as I can and clip them together all along the outer edge. So when you're flipping them at the folded ends, you want to make sure that those folded edges are aligned perfectly. Otherwise it will not look very nice when you're top stitching. Okay, so just make sure that you're tugging here so that these raw edges meet perfectly along the entire length. And when I'm top stitching, this time when you're top stitching, you're sewing along all 3 sides. You can also do a quick base stitch along these outer edges, just that way there they won't shift. So you can baste along the longer raw edges, and then you'll want to do top stitching along the shorter edges and along the zipper here, and then again this short edge. So if you're using a combination of cork and fabric or vinyl in fabric like I am, then what you're doing is, usually what I do is I start here and I top stitch along here, and then when I get to top stitching along the zipper, so I just gently tug on both the lining and the cork just to make sure that my seam allowance is nice and that everything is away from the zipper. You don't want anything to get caught in your zipper. Okay, so I have my first set of zipper panels attached to the zipper. Now you're going to repeat the same steps we've just done to attach the remaining 2 zipper panel pieces to the other side of the zipper. You're doing exactly the same thing, making sure that the raw ends are near the opening of the zipper and the folded ends are near the closed end of your zipper. Here's our completed zipper panel. Just make sure that you do a little bit of stitching at the end of your zipper if you're using zipper tape, so that you don't accidentally remove your zipper pull. So we'll see you in video 6 when we complete the assembly of our lining shell and then do the final assembly.